Okay, the agenda is approved as submitted. Does council have any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications to disclose? Okay, hearing none, we have communications by and petitions from visitors. Again, I'm going to drop my mask just to make sure it can be heard clearly. I'm 15 feet away from anyone else in the room, and the city hall is closed to public access at this time. So we're having some technical difficulties. My apologies to the public. You're probably aware that all of our cell phone carriers have been having intermittent outages over the last couple of days. For whatever reason, our public call-in line and only our public call-in line is not working, and we just became aware of that a few minutes ago. So what we're going to do to facilitate public comment is email any comments that you would like entered as public testimony for this meeting to city clerk at cityofcordova.net. So email any public testimony to cityclerk at cityofcordova.net, and those will attach to these meeting minutes as public testimony. Any testimony or emails that are received outside of the actual meeting start and stop will just be included in the next, in the minutes as correspondence on the next council meeting. So we apologize for that inconvenience. We've gone to great lengths to have a stable and accessible platform for public testimony, but we don't have control over the carriers, so my apologies. We do have two guest speakers today, and the first is the Incident Management Team report from our Incident Management Team liaison, Heather Brannon. And Heather, if you're online, you can go ahead and provide that report.
Sure, thank you, Clay. Okay, so the last few weeks has been pretty busy for the Incident Management Team in general. Currently, both our harbor and airport plans have been activated. The IMC is now working on all of the fine-tuning of details. At the airport, they have a team of folks daily who are giving out information on mandates and what services local businesses are offering. In addition, they're asking the incoming travelers to fill out a form upon entering Cordova. This process not only informs incoming travelers of Cordova's expectations, but gives them the tools to quarantine in Cordova successfully due to our standards and guidelines. So far, there's been much cooperation, and although there are occasionally issues that may need to be addressed, our volunteers are doing a fine job supporting both our incident management team and our community. We will be looking to add to this team if anyone is interested in coming on to help volunteer or as a paid position. The harbor plan is moving along. Although it may be the end of next week that all the processes are permanently in place, there's much work being done to prepare this area. And good work and planning takes some time, although the team is working diligently. Hand washing stations are to be placed at the top of each dock. These stations can be operated by using the elbow or the knee, so you don't have to use your hands to be able to actually operate the station. Signage regarding the mandate, COVID-19 and harbor guard guidelines are being printed and placed throughout both harbors. Extra porta-johns may be set up at some point. Currently, I believe there are plans in the works to put an extra porta-john underneath the pool overhang. The pool additionally will be opened up as an extra shower facility for those without holding tanks needing a secondary shower option. The pool is extremely easy to clean and sanitize because of the way the facility is built, and the cleaning materials are on site. So this is a really good, safe option for us to try and put out there for our fishing community. I think we're looking at May 4th for an opening date for the pool showers, and information on that process and procuring showers at the pool will be posted and announced to the public when the process is completely finalized. To see that will be on the COVID-19.cityofcordova.net webpage and the Cordova Prepared page, as well as the Likely Parks and Rec page. The harbor will be designated a hot zone for the summer. All are required to wear masks while on the dock. Delivery and pickup options have been created by the grocery store and hardware stores to support the fishermen and crews as essential workers in the safest way possible. We want to make sure that all of these new procedures that everyone is using for their businesses are communicated to our fishing fleet, so that they can easily and safely get what they need and want throughout the season. Fishing vessels are currently completing mutual aid agreements with the city. These mutual aid agreements communicate COVID-19 expectations and understanding, and will list their crew and check them. They will list their crew on these forms and check them with the harbor upon arrival. If they come in during the day, they'll check them with Tony as harbor master, and if they come in the evening, they can call dispatch. And this kind of helps us set up some structure for the beginning of our season, so we can kind of keep check on who's on their quarantine, who hasn't. We can give them that good, strong list of expectations and things they need to be looking out for their own vessels. In addition, they do have the state paperwork to do as well, and I believe today there was a webinar on that is given by Tom Flosky from the SUC. In addition to wearing masks at the harbor, all individuals in Cordova must wear a mask, bandana, or other type of protective covering over their nose and mouth when entering a building open to the public, at the harbor, on docks and ramps, or when pumping gas or using the gas station amenities, and in any other setting where social distancing of at least 6 feet is not possible. The City of Cordova, to supplement the airport and harbor plans, will be hiring a few folks in 2 different positions to help support that effort. One of the positions will be for port of entry ambassadors to distribute information and resources to folks coming into Cordova, and the other position will be for custodians to help keep the public restrooms clean and safe throughout the summer season. Both of these teams will be given safety plans and taught about proper PPE. Additionally, moving on to sheltering, Cordova Junior High School Gymnasium has been modified for use as an alternate care center, depending on multiple scenarios Cordova might be faced with. Currently, it's the last resort option, as the city has set up a non-congruent sheltering process with the help of local lodging entities and medical mental health professionals. If the person needs to shelter, they will contact the medical or mental health facility and will be granted a shelter voucher upon communicating their needs and meeting the required criteria. Other avenues for shelter have been discussed and will be looked into further if they become necessary. Right now, non-congregate is probably our most positive way to go because it doesn't group people in one giant area. People can have their own private space, and then if for some reason they do become ill, you're not worried about what type of confusion you're dealing with or separating folks. In addition to the city effort, several other entities have stepped forward with a great effort. The Cordova School District is sending home weekly lunches for all students. I believe they've expanded that to the preschool age students as well, which is pretty amazing. And I think that their number sits somewhere around 400, not 100% positive on that. UCMC has opened up their senior lunch program to those 55 and above, where it was previously 60 and above, and they're currently serving about 70 elderly citizens a day. And VE is also serving Native communities for the use of their food bank and the elderly care services that Jackie Lab provides. Salvation Army has been preparing community food boxes on a monthly basis, and they've currently experienced a jump from feeding 40 families per month to 70 families per month. The Salvation Army currently at this time is looking for donations. There's a flyer out on Cordova Prepared. If you're able to donate to that cause, it would be wonderful. If not, that's okay as well. Salvation Army in general, the state of Alaska has joined with the Food Bank of Alaska. And what this has done is opened up them up to getting free supplies that are just staple items. And so for the next 2 months, they're going to support Cordova in making sure that we can get baskets of things like beans and rice and whatnot to help fish out to our families. Moving on, the Cordova Chamber is currently sourcing business information for the community. They've populated a list of businesses and recorded the changes those businesses have made daily routines in daily routines for the public. If you have questions on when a business is open, if they're doing delivery, pickup, Chamber is a great resource. If you own or operate a small business, you can leave information there and check on information for small business, economic injury, and disaster loans. You can email the Cordova Chamber at programs@cordovachamber.com with any of your questions. The City of Cordova has recently developed a COVID-19 webpage. It is covid19.cityofcordova.net. This page is the official go-to site for all things COVID-19 related to Cordova. The page was designed with a great amount of consideration and thought for the community, as well as, the collaboration and streamlining it so that it's easily navigable by all user groups, whether you're a community member, a fisherman, etc. There's links for everyone to click to get where they need to go. As a city, we're also super fortunate to have many groups of citizens volunteering their time and donating resources to the COVID-19 cause currently. There's a network of ladies making masks for the community, as well as an additional family-generating face shield 3D printer. There are folks checking on the elderly, delivering meals, and groceries to those in need. As a city, we are pretty humbled and grateful for all the helping hands, especially those of us on the IMT. There's a lot of community members that are filling these extra needs, and it's pretty wonderful. So that being said, we are looking at a long haul throughout the summer. If you're willing to volunteer at the harbor, airport, or assisting with the elderly and vulnerable population, you can email your name and contact information to emc@cityofcordova.net, or there is a volunteer form that you can fill out at covid19.cityofcordova.net. This form is pretty helpful. It tells us who you are, what you're interested in, and what your skills are, so that you can be placed to volunteer in the most appropriate way if necessary. Moving on to our medical team, our medical community specifically has been huge support. They've assisted in vetting all of the processor plans, helping us to develop a non-congregate shelter process. They've given assistance in drafting volunteer safety plans, and just been altogether amazing to work with. This last week, I believe Clay and Dr. Blackdar paired together and visited local businesses to give feedback on safety plans to help assist local business owners. In addition, we will have the public health nurse coming the week of May 11th, and she is available to help folks with their safety plans by appointment. Multiple medical personnel have supported the city on local processor and council calls that currently take place weekly. So there's just been a ton of support in the medical community, and we're really grateful to have that. The medical community itself has made strides in preparing for COVID-19. The City of Cordova currently has 3 Abbott rapid response testing machines and a healthy testing capacity. The first of these testing machines was given to NVE by the Alaska Native Medical Center. Following 2 were given to CCNC through the state. Both CCNC and Alanka Clinic staff have trained on and are currently operating the machines. I believe that NVE is going to, or the Alanka Clinic, I should say, is going to widespread testing methods. So how we test and who we test is vastly opening up. All processes for both CCNC and Alanka have been clearly communicated between the facilities as an effort to cross-train employees, so that if we get to a point where we need to be moving people around, we're capable of doing that. EMS made arrangements for preparing for COVID-19, including collaborating with the medical professionals on developed processes, ordering additional equipment, and putting their own safety procedures in place. The collaboration of all these entities is going to help ensure that we all have strong plans in place, and we all have that cooperation and communication to better serve and protect our community from COVID-19. The city has an additional MOU with Guardian, I believe, and the SCOC has partnered with both the National Guard and the USCG for air support. So we can look for additional resources in both of those places. We have as far as public outreach, the city's formed 3 groups that they're meeting with via teleconference. The industry group is the shippers and the processors. The industry meets every Friday at 3 to relay updates and check in on progress with the city. All local processors are participating and actively engaging in these calls. They have cooperatively set up plans that are put in place to support the safety of both their staff and Cordova's community. Both Trident and Ocean Beauty are going to be bringing on their own medical staff that will coordinate with Cordova's local staff. Trident will be quarantining their workers once at Anchorage before transporting them to Cordova, where they will again quarantine for the added security of the community. Ocean Beauty staff will be tested prior to arriving in Cordova, and again prior to the end of their quarantine in Cordova for added security. Both plants are requesting that workers stay on the premises as much as possible for the duration of the season for the safety of both the community and business in general. There's going to be gates placed along Jimport Avenue that will block off Trident and Ocean Beauty, and gates in between Trident and Beauty as well to kind of try and keep separation this summer and add the extra amount of security. As well, Copper River is going to be putting up gates. All of the canneries are communicating their incoming numbers as they're aware of what their status is, to kind of try and help the incident management team track, what our population coming into Cordova looks like and when we're going to start to see that huge influx. Currently, 60 North has their full staff in quarantine right now, and they'll be the first facility that we have that is completely staffed. So that's a positive sign. I haven't heard there are any issues yet, so we're moving forward successfully so far. The second group that we speak to on a weekly or bi-weekly basis is the Essential Business Group, and currently this group is all the hardware stores and grocery stores. We meet every other Wednesday at 3. During these meetings, I engage them about any changes in their processes, what's working, what's not working, what do you need help with. Additionally, they're provided with updated city information relating to their needs. The goal is to help build and facilitate safe processes for the entire community. COVID-19 signage is provided if businesses need through the city. The collaboration of these entities is super appreciated. It's a really rough time, and we have some pretty hard conversations sometimes. And so we appreciate everyone's feedback. All local businesses in operation or prior to reopening will fill out a mutual aid agreement with the city, which includes their COVID-19 mitigation plan. This plan is to help keep the businesses and the business staff and patrons safe throughout, what COVID-19 looks like for Cordova. All the mutual aid agreements for both the harbor and the local businesses are being reviewed by members of the incident management team. We're not only asking folks to fill out this paperwork, we're actually reviewing it when it comes in to make sure that everybody's thoughts and plans are thorough and to ensure the safety of the community. Participation in both the fishing community and the business community is greatly appreciated. And again, without the cooperation of everyone involved in this situation, the process would not be as seamless as it is. And one of the things that's going to help us succeed is that everybody's kind of togetherness. Third group that we speak with is the stakeholder group. It's a list of folks essential to Cordova, including critical infrastructure and local agencies. We meet every other Wednesday at 4. Generally, we give out city updates, and then the city receives updates from them. And additionally, we address any questions or concerns anyone might have. The meeting groups allow the incident command to keep a broad picture of how we're doing as a community. The information received helps direct an action to a need. In combination with community concerns and questions to the Cordova Prepared email, we can identify those gaps, and the team is able to troubleshoot the areas of need. And we're pretty thankful for the input received through the meetings and the Cordova Prepared email. It helps to produce strong plans and procedures. So thank you to everyone on that. The Cordova Prepared email is cordovaprepared@yahoo.com. feel free to send any questions or concerns there. Currently, the City of Cordova and the Native Village of Piak have entered into a unified command in order to support all the processes fully moving forward. This allows us to combine our resources and kind of work together to help Cordova as a whole. Chris Johnson and Dana Franceschetti and Carrie Collins have joined our incident management team from both MVE and Alonco Clinic. And the city is grateful to have their participation, and we look forward to working together as partners throughout the response. And last but not least, collaboration and cooperation of so many people, businesses, industry partners, agencies is again what makes this a super strong community and gives Cordova the ability to stay resilient during these times. Every extension of effort is eternally appreciated and is what is going to help us stay safe and healthy in the coming months. I know that some of the plans across the state have kind of loosened up, but the way that we're looking at Cordova right now, this influx of people, is that we want to try and stay on top of things and stay vigilant throughout the summer on our practices and maintain our safety level, because together through all these processes, currently we are saving lives. So that is very important. And that is what I have for everyone today. I may have missed something as it has been a very busy last few weeks. So if anybody has questions on anything, whatnot, let me know, and I will get those answers for you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Heather. What I'm going to do is go through the city council list here so they can ask questions. And I'll start with Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, thank you. I don't imagine Mr. Muley is there, Aaron. Just a correction on those washdowns, wash sinks, hand wash and sinks at the harbor. There will be one at the top of the ramp, one at the bottom of the ramp also, and they will be foot controlled, not a knee. There'll be a foot pedal that you have to hit, and there'll also be a foot pump for a soap dispenser. So we'll have to look and see if we can mark those up well. It actually is a little bit confusing if you don't know how you first walk up to it. You have to do. And then I have a question too. I think I read on one of your releases that we had 600 tests, and then I think I read another place that we had 900 tests. So could you clarify exactly how many tests we do have in Cordova?
So right now, give or take maybe 20, we're sitting at about 900. And I do believe that since that number of 900 come out, we have received more, but we've also given some tests. And as far as other communities, we are sitting very good at our number. Our access to materials has been pretty fortunate. So, and I look forward to seeing kind of more of those supplies roll in as we get closer to our starting fishing day.
Okay, thank you. You might want to correct that in your last email that was sent out. So thank you. That's all I have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Sherman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I can answer Mr. Baylor's question. That 100 number is in the frequently asked questions on the COVID website. So we are updating those frequently asked questions today, and so that change will be made. And I don't have any questions for Heather. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilman Guard.
No questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Meyer.
Yeah, I had a question. Did the harbor master order some Lima signaling flags, and have they come in, and also how many per vessel?
I believe Tony was able to order Lima flags. I don't know if they've come in, and I don't know what the number is on that. I believe he was able to procure a couple hundred of them, though.
I'm just going to give a little update, Vice Mayor Meyer. Paul Tremblay, the incident manager, is here. Those were ordered. We've received about 300 of those flags now.
Okay, thank you. I had one other question or suggestion. I think I've said it in the past too. And I'm happy to help with this too if you need. But I saw a picture of Petersburg and some of the signage that they had, and I think it would be really nice to closely look at it. Just simple ones that say keep distance, wear masks, so we're not having to get into the different orders and stuff we have. It doesn't have to be everything that we are legal wordage or anything, but just some clear signs that they wear masks and have them printed up on the vinyl banners. I think it looks really well that what Petersburg did, and I think it would be a good suggestion for Cordova. So just thoughts. Thank you for everything you guys are doing and the volunteers.
Did you want to speak to that comment, Heather?
No, I think the signage is good, and I know that we're in the mode of creating some of that as well. The other one that I would make is those listening on the dock, just so that we don't have people wandering down there. But I think that's a great suggestion, and we'll forward it to Kathy.
Okay, thanks. Councilman Schaefer.
Hi, yeah. First of all, Heather, thank you for that awesome summary. And then I did have a couple questions, mostly, and maybe you answered this in your summary and I just missed it, but I was just wondering how the progress of hiring the harbor ambassadors is going and how many that are going to be hired.
So I don't have numbers on how many applicants have been put in. I was told yesterday, though, that we have received several applicants, both in the way of volunteers and in the way of hired patrons. I do know that we're going to create 3 different groups, one for the airport, one for the ferry, and one for the harbor as well. Those groups will probably rotate out, and I do know that all the groups are going to be trained. And I think that over the next few days, we're probably going to get over more applications, but from the conversation that I had with Erin, it is looking good.
Okay, so that's in the works. And then another question is the hand washing stations and the porta potties for the harbor. Do you have an estimate of when those will be in place?
Is Tom on the line?
Paul?
Yes, I can answer that. We actually have one in place on the top of the dock here by Cordova Outboard. We hope to have a couple more in place on the other side of the harbor, but we're waiting for parts and pieces. We hope to have it within a week. Okay, we'll get into it as soon as we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just in case people ask, it's nice to have some sort of ballpark for them. So, yep, thank you. That's all I had.
Councilman Schaefer, I think the total count is roughly 10 plus or minus.
Okay, great.
And you had no other questions?
Nope, that's all for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Allison.
No questions. Thanks for the update, Heather.
Councilman Gleason.
No, my question got answered, so thank you, Heather, for that. Was a very good, very informative update.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Is there any other questions by council? Okay, sometimes as you go through the first time, you'll think of another question, so I just wanted to create that opportunity. The next guest speaker is April Horton from Shag's Hair Studio. And again, council, I know you've made it clear you like to have public input, and especially at the state of affairs now from businesses and so forth. So I went ahead and put Councilman Sherman,
No questions at this time.
Councilman Baylor.
I just thank for providing all that information. That helps.
Vice Mayor Meyer.
I don't necessarily have any questions, but I would agree with one of the statements saying how, as a city, we do a better job connecting with the local businesses in town and giving them a call and talking to them about the mutual agreed mutual aid agreements, or somehow we need to be able to have a better connection with the business owners in our town. So thank you for presenting today.
Hey, Councilman Allison.
I don't have any questions. I just have a couple of comments. So, April mentioned that we're part of the same team, but I would go one step further than ask to say we're partners in every business in town. Some were 6% partners, some were 12, some maybe even more than that. So, I would agree with the Councilmember Tate for this. And I've said it before, at the council table, COVID or no COVID, I think we forget sometimes as a city that we are partners in all of these businesses, and we need to involve them more. I'm not sure exactly how to do that, but we need to remember we're partners.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Guard.
I'd just like to thank you for putting in the time and effort you did in coming up with the plan, and I have no questions at this time.
Thank you. Councilman Gleason.
Yeah, I thought we were following the state, along with the state. I didn't realize we were not. I thought we changed our minds and we weren't going to follow along with what the state was doing. Are incorrect? Maybe Helen can answer that.
I think that the council last week decided that it wanted to pause and allow us to see how the impacts of the fleet would be on our community, the fishing industry. So you all chose not to follow this new state guidelines?
I guess I'm just not remembering that. Must be getting old. Well, thank you, April, for that, for your comments. They're appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any further comments by council?
Mr. Mayor, Tom Baylor.
Councilman Baylor.
I think just to clarify what the manager said, at the last council meeting, we said let's keep Cordova's regulation mandate in place until our next meeting, where we could have a public discussion on whether or not we wanted to let businesses reopen. That was the discussion. So we didn't have to open and close. We wanted to have that discussion at this meeting. So, and I'm assuming that's what we are going to do at some point.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Baylor, for the clarification. Other questions or comments, council? Okay, thank you, April. Appreciate your testimony today.
Thank you for your time.
And Kathy Renfelt, Chamber of Commerce.
Hi, good afternoon. Everyone can hear me?
Yes, you're loud and clear. Thank you.
Great. So as Mr. Mayor said, I'm speaking on behalf of the Cordova Chamber of Commerce today, and I want to echo the sentiments of gratitude for the tireless work that you, Mr. Council, and the IMC are doing to protect Cordova as much as possible during this pandemic. But I also want to thank you for your consideration of important economic issues in the midst of all this as well. As Heather mentioned, as plans have been in development for Cordova, the IMC has been meeting with several groups, including industry, essential businesses, and stakeholders, which has been immensely helpful for those businesses and organizations involved. However, there's a section of Cordova non-essential businesses, like personal services, like April, retail, others, the grocery and hardware store, food, lodging, outfitters, and others who have felt out of the loop. A good example is the most recent emergency order, which you were just discussing. It was released evening of Friday, April 24th, containing
restrictions on non-essential businesses. Many of the affected businesses felt rather blindsided by this, receiving no previous communications from the city about it, and also because this order was released more than 9 hours after the state's Reopen Alaska Responsibly plan went into effect. The governor announced his Reopen plan days before that, in order to give businesses time to acquaint themselves with necessary protocols and mitigation measures required under this plan, to prepare their premises and alert their customers and start booking appointments. So, hearing nothing officially to the contrary from the city, many of these businesses invested significant time, energy, and money into putting plans in place to align with the state mandates seen as April said. In general, the response from businesses, when I reached out to them about this as the chamber, on when and how Cordova should reopen is mixed. Some businesses did not feel safe opening yet last Friday, and therefore they were not making plans to do so. Some of those businesses do feel like they could, if you do so, before May 20th. Others actually took reservations and reopened Friday morning. Then they were forced to cancel those appointments that they had booked with clients and re-communicate with their customer base the status of their business, putting struggling businesses in yet another tenuous and difficult situation that caused confusion for them and for the customers that they were trying to rebuild those relationships with. One thing that I'm hearing consistently from Cordova's business owners is that they are confused, stressed, and they need more consistent communication on these issues from a voice with authority. I realize the unique constraints that the IMC was under for this particular issue with the uncertainty of whether Cordova could enact stricter protocols or not, but it would have been extremely helpful if there had at least been an official communication of the city's intent or more notice given on the city's new rule. So my specific request is this: in order to retain the trust and open communication that we've built between the city and the business community over the last few years, I'd like to urge you, the council, and the IMC to use the chamber as a conduit for those businesses to start receiving more regular communication from you guys and act as a two-way communication conduit with the city. If the council or the IMC is considering an order or a rule or a change that would affect any of these businesses, we should be given official communications in advance to the chamber so that we can be ready to help these businesses prepare and so that we can help increase understanding and compliance from the businesses. Like you said, we are partners, and the chamber has been a strong partner to the city for years to help kind of bridge that gap. And there's nothing that's changed between now and then. We're here, and we're trying to help. Information has been difficult to share, so we would love to get some more official communications from the city and the IMC to share with businesses. And lastly, I'd like to share with the council that the chamber has begun working with some partners, outline goals for supporting local businesses through relief, rebuilding, and recovery. And I look forward to sharing those with the council and the community in the future.
Okay. So, council, before we go to questions, I'd like to ask Manager Helen to speak to that. There were some unique circumstances last week.
So I just want to clarify for everyone's sake. As you well know, these health mandates coming from the state have been coming fast and furious, and as sometimes new mandates replace previous mandates, and it is hard to keep up. I can certainly say on the part of city, we do our best. The health mandate number 16, which was the Reopen Alaska Responsibly plan, took effect last Friday, this past Friday at 8 o'clock in the morning. And as council, that information was shared, that mandate came out, and council did have the opportunity to adopt those and felt that it was reasonable to have an opportunity to think about it and contemplate it today. So I think the council action was actually took place before the enactment of the state's plan, which took effect on 8 a.m. last Friday. So, and again, the city of Anchorage postponed until Monday, this past Monday, And you, Cordova Council, asked to consider it today. So I think we're well in line with that. And I certainly understand the concerns that businesses have, but I don't think we were out of line or non-communicative. It just happens so fast. And I think council was very responsive in addressing this before the mandate took effect last Friday.
Okay, council questions or comments? Councilman Meyer.
Yeah. I'm having a hard time with reopening non-essential businesses at this time. I could be maybe persuaded in a different direction if I saw some good outlined plans of how we're going to accomplish something like that. You know, with the processors, the people, and the essential businesses, the city and MIT has been working really closely with them for all their plans and how to get influx of people into town as the safest way possible. So I wouldn't be opposed to maybe opening up Cordova a little bit more, but I would need to see some plans in hand of how that would carry out for me to feel comfortable with reopening things at this time. We're just isolated in Cordova in a way that's different. This virus has been, other places, and we can see it coming. And we need to do everything we can to be as safe as possible in Cordova because we are in a remote place. Just because we have 0 confirmed cases right now doesn't mean we haven't had cases, or doesn't mean that it won't come here. So those are kind of my thoughts on it right now.
Mr. Mayor, can I respond to that? I see at the chamber.
Okay, I just want to remind council, this isn't the time that you're going to discuss whether you support changing them or whatnot. And Kathy, for your part, if you had a policy suggestion on behalf of the chamber for council, whether the business community is asking council to take a hard policy stance, which is as restrictive as possible, a moderate policy stance, like in line with the community of Anchorage, or a soft policy stance, which is open things up sooner and more rapidly.
This is Kathy Rentop. I would say because there's different opinions from one business owner to the next, I would suggest a moderate stance. And I would also like to point out that if you're interested on what kind of protective measures and mitigations would go into place with any of these businesses opening, I can email to you, and I would encourage you to read attachments C through H of Mandate 16. It lines out very clearly the strict protocols that would have to go into place for these businesses to open.
Okay, thank you. And then Council Manager Howarth had an additional.
And I was just going to mention what Kathy Rentfeld just mentioned. The state Reopen Alaska mandate has very, very specific and very clear guidelines for each of the areas in which businesses types that would be allowed to open, and the protocols are very, very strict. So I don't think we would have an issue with that. It's just whether, as Mayor Clay asked, whether or not what kind of reopening would council like for our city to consider.
Okay, Councilman Meyer, were you finished, or did you have other comments or questions?
Nope, those are just kind of my initial thoughts hearing about it. I don't have any specific questions at the time.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just a point of order. I believe we have this on our agenda under new business. I think that would be the appropriate time to get into that subject.
That's correct. So this is just, actually, it's, I don't know what to call it. It's really not on the agenda as a guest speaker. So really it's guest comments, and it's really not open to question and answer. So I think Kathy's had a chance to express her thoughts and her policy guidance to the council. So I agree, Councilman Baylor. We're on to the next item. However, is there any other thoughts from council? or any other policy item to address here?
This is Councilman Schaefer.
Councilman Schaefer.
Yeah, I just want to thank Kathy for her comments on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce. And I think that we as a council and our IMC team should keep the Chamber in mind when trying to better our outreach efforts to the business community and use the Chamber as a resource when coming up with policies and mandates for the community. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments under communications by and petitions from visitors, council? Okay, thank you. Thank you to all the speakers and testimony. And you'll see me checking my cell phone every once in a while. I have periodically been calling into the public testimony line to see if it's open, and it looks like it just did come open. So if you are in the audience and would like to make audience comments, that telephone line is now open, 253-6202, and you'll get on-hold music, and then just wait, and when we pick up the call and you're asked to speak, turn off your YouTube or put that on mute so that it doesn't interfere with the phone call, and we can take public testimony. So we're watching that phone line now. It's 253-6202. So while we're waiting, I'll go ahead and transition into reports of officers. And I wanted to share a couple of things with council that just transpired over the last 24 hours that I think are of significance, and also kind of speak back to last meeting where we had a pretty in-depth discussion about the role of the city manager and the incident management team and the emergency and tactical side versus the role of government and policy and day-to-day government business. And it's a lot to swallow in one meeting. And it's taken me several weeks to get my arms more and more around the separation of responses and government duties and whatnot. And I thought it, before council deliberates today, it might be good just to have a quick review of that, because I did hear some things last week that I think we should maybe circle back to and clarify. So what's transpired to date is that the city council declared a state of emergency. And when you do that per city code, you're handing executive powers to the manager to respond to the emergency. So anything really related to the emergency is the emergency, and that's in the city manager's purview to work with the incident management team, with the attorney, with state and federal leaders, and with other resources with the attorney to make sure that the rules that she's executing on an hourly, day-to-day basis align with the Constitution, with state laws, with federal laws, and with the needs of our own medical community and incident management team to quickly execute. So that's what you hand over. So when you look at something like a mask rule, that is an emergency. And so maybe in isolation you say, well, whether or not we put masks on today or tomorrow, it's not an emergency, so that's something maybe council should weigh in on. But to give a little clearer picture of how that actually works out, by the time that rule goes into place, it's already had the input of the incident management team, who has looked at all the logistics of implementing it, enforcing it, and the legal aspects of that. It's had legal review. It's been most importantly targeted towards the health and welfare of the city of Cordova in the pending incident. And so that's what's all been packaged when it gets to council. So it's not like a typical ordinance or resolution where council kind of weighs in and picks it apart at that time. Council has a very strong and important role to say, does this meet our policy objectives? And if not, council can overturn that rule. But it isn't something, if we open it up and say, well, let's look at this for the next few days or think about this and start looking at the different tactical elements of it, that can actually slow down the process. So I know communications is important to council, and it's hard to go through the effort of printing things that show the specifics of a rule and get those published and out to the community when it's unclear as to whether or not we're even going to implement that rule or whether council's going to overturn it. So I just kind of wanted to use that as an example of making sure that the incident management team, city manager are putting things in place, bringing things to you, and it by no means supersedes a conversation, and council's input and suggestions to the team as you collect those from the public and get public input, because that's an important role. And I think another thing to revisit from last week is that as we looked at the, in the meeting before, as we looked at the emergency action plan, we recognized that there were early places in that where the policy discussions should have happened and been brought into that. So as we've recognized that this is not an event, that's more of a long drawn out process, we recognize that those policy discussions should have happened sooner. The clarifications and training for council and those roles should have happened sooner. And one thing we might be able to do with our public relations firm here is to kind of capture this incident and have just kind of maybe a cheat sheet or some guidance for councilmen, that when an incident comes up, you don't have to go read through 185-page plan to try to understand what your role is and what setting the policy is, because that's really kind of what should set the chart the course for the incident. And again, those policies are, does the city want to take an aggressive approach, a moderate approach, a light approach, and what are the goals, objectives that council wants to see met to protect the community, public health and welfare. And then the last item is, I think because of the inundation that you as councilmen are getting, the incident management team is getting, that I'm getting, that Cordova is somehow underperforming, that we're not responding quickly enough or appropriately enough to this emergency. And I can just say firsthand, nothing's further from the truth. The reason the state and federal government are reaching out to Cordova and the eyes are on us right now, and other communities keep calling us and borrowing our forms and processes, is because they've been very effective. And there's a recognition that with our salmon fishery, we are going to be earlier in the season, and the state's actually reaching out to us and making comments like they wished a lot of other communities were adopting the processes and practices that we're putting in place. So I know from the public perspective, it looks like things may not be happening quick enough or get communicating quick enough, but really we are on step, and that's just not coming from us. That's from the state emergency management officers who called in this morning and participated and so forth. So I just wanted to kind of put that on the table and say that even though we may be a little hard on ourselves as a community and as leaders, we're actually executing very well, and that's putting us in a position to wrap up, to be getting these calls from the governor's office, from Doctors Inc. Last night and this morning, to move additional resources our way, what we need to respond to this, so that we can protect our public health and welfare, but also reopen businesses and protect people's livelihoods in a safe and orderly method. So that's my report, and now the manager's report.
I got some questions on the manager for the mayor's report, please.
Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, just some quick comments on that, because I think you all know where I stand. I think we should be following the plan. We did the City of Cordova Emergency Operations Plan, and if I'm correct, council adopted that. I don't think the manager adopted it. I don't think the mayor did. I think council did. So we are in this plan, and this is what we adopted. And two of the items speak today, clearly today, review the plan to close, reopen schools, businesses, and public events. So we are correct in the fact that we should be reviewing this plan, and I would take one step further, given it approval. And again, under community disease control, because closely monitor changes
Councilman Baylor, we're having a really hard time hearing. I can't make out what you're saying. It's
Let me get off on that myself.
much better.
I guess I'd just encourage you to review the plan that council adopted. And we are in it, and it's only 8 days with the pandemic. It's not the whole book. It kind of lays out what council should be doing, and most of the things that we're going to be talking about on this agenda as far as reopening businesses to mass, it says clearly that policy group should be involved in that. So sometimes I think we should get a lawyer that represents council. It's just odd some of the statements that are made. So again, I would encourage us to use this tool. Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't catch all that, but you're correct, Councilman Baylor. Those are policy decisions. So, is there other questions or comments on the mayor's report?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilman Schaefer.
Okay, Councilman Schaefer.
Hi, yeah, I was just wondering if you had got any more information about how that federal funding can be spent or not?
Yes.
If there's any more guidance on that?
Yes, I think on use and timing, and I'll let our manager Howarth can speak to that.
So at this moment, the state allocation is a work in progress, if you will. It needs still to be approved by the legislature, so we don't have actual numbers, but we're getting more and more guidance on how it can be used, and it is exclusively for COVID-related expenses. It cannot be used to replace lost revenue, but the terms of what an expense is for COVID is being negotiated, let's say. The federal government is allowing fairly broad interpretation, but the state will control what we can and cannot do. And those guidelines have not yet been set. We expect those within a week or two.
Does that answer your question, Councilman Schaefer?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
You bet. Is there other questions on the mayor's report? Okay, hearing none, I got off the agenda here and I actually missed a second item under communications by and petitions from visitors. So I'll revert to that. And the first is a CC Cordova Community Medical Center Authority Board report.
Yeah, hi, Clay. Greg Meyer.
Thank you.
You hear me okay?
Yes, sorry I missed that. So thank you, Greg.
That's right, that's fine. And Heather actually mentioned a number of things on my list, so mine should be short. But do have Randall is the CEO, CFO currently, and his contract ends June 24th. So we brought in Dr. Sanders is coming back to Cordova, be our CEO. She's committed for a year if we need her that long. That'll be nice to have someone at the top that's physically here and next to Doctor in town. We've also got Eric Price from Sitka. He was with Search. He's coming on in a couple of weeks to be our CFO. So we've got a couple of key replacement personnel at the top there. We've been able to secure about $1.7 million in grants and donations, and we've been working closely with Alonka for PPE and supplies and equipment. And like Heather mentioned, we have about 900 test kits. We've ordered 2 ventilators and 3 defibrillators, which should be here in June or July. It's a while with those, I guess. So that's about all I've got. If you have any questions, I'll be standing by.
Excuse me, I'll just go through the list here. Councilman Allison?
No, nothing. Thank you, Greg.
Councilman Sherman?
That's all great news, Greg. Thank you very much.
Vice Mayor Meyer?
No questions. Just thanks for all the work that CCMC and Alonka staff is doing, and the board. And it's nice to hear that we're going to have a Dr. Sanders as the CEO. Boots on the ground. I think that's great. Thanks.
Councilman Baylor?
Just thanks to everybody.
Thank you. Councilman Guard?
Yeah, thank you very much for the report there, Greg. I do have one question on the respirators. To be able to use those effectively, are we going to have any staffing added with those? I don't know much about them, but I keep hearing respiratory therapists, term respiratory therapists used when they talk about operations of respirators in the news. So I just wondered if you had anything on that. Thank you.
I don't know. I think Heather did mention some training and stuff, and we do have, there is a lot of training being done, and Dr. Sanders and Black Dark feel like everyone will be trained to use all the equipment. That's all I know.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Councilman Guard, one of the things too is mutual assistance available from the state. One of the things we can ask for is medical staff from the state and federal government. So I'll just throw that in. Councilman.
I understand. It was something I didn't know enough about there that I kept hearing things talked about on the news, and when I read news and heard news, they were using the term respiratory therapist a lot, so I didn't know. I just didn't know, so that's all I was asking for.
You bet. Councilman Schaefer.
I don't have any questions, but thanks so much for the update and all your hard work.
Councilman Gleason.
Yeah, I got nothing but to say thanks, Greg, for everything you've been doing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Meyer, for your report. Do we have a school board report?
Hi, this is Alex Brusson, Superintendent. Good afternoon, everybody. A couple of things on my notepad here. We have about 3 weeks of school left. Our last day is going to be May the 20th. So we are in sort of final stages of the school year. Want to give a shout out to parents and community members, staff, everybody who's really made this quick transition a possibility. And, you know, just take a break, unwind from technology, step away from your computer screen, and get outside as you can. Sometimes it becomes a little bit oppressive, I think, for of screens on a daily basis. So, but all things considered, I think the district transitioned really well in maintaining some educational formats for students. Meal service continues to go as we are planning. Meals get distributed once a week on Tuesday mornings, and those are 5 days worth of breakfast items and 5 days worth of lunch items for students. And we are putting out about 400 of those 400 students every Tuesday morning. So about 4,000 meals in total a week. The district is, the school board conducting all of its meetings via Zoom online, and those meetings have continued to be posted and announced as appropriate. We do have a budget work session tonight, our FY21 budget work session, so notices are out for one to call in and listen to that. We will have our budget for the FY21 school year to the city manager probably on Friday. That's the first, there's a statutory timeline to do that, so we will have that as well. And lastly, of course, I know this is an item for consideration later under new business, but Kate Williams, principal at the high school, and myself will be online to answer any questions about wanting to use the school facility for some recording of graduation ceremony. And I'm available for any questions should you have them.
Okay, thank you. I'll go through the council list here. Councilman Gleason.
Nothing. Thanks, Alex.
Councilman Baylor,
Nothing here.
Councilman Meyer,
No, just thank you.
Councilman Guard,
No questions. Thank you very much.
Councilman Allison,
No questions. Thank you.
Councilman Schaefer,
No questions. Thanks so much.
and Councilman Sherman.
No questions. Thank you very much, Alex.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Appreciate you calling in. And we haven't had any public calls. Okay, there will be an opportunity at the end of the agenda too for those watching online to call in with audience comments at the end of the meeting. And that phone number again is 253-6202. So back onto reports of officers and managers report.
So much of what I was going to talk about has already been mentioned, but I just want to really talk about how proud I am of this community and the team of folks that have been working on this COVID response. I moved to Cordova and took this job 6 months ago or so and never could have imagined, as none of us ever could have imagined, that we would be dealing with coronavirus. And had I known that this was on the horizon, I might have run fleeing from this position. But here I am immersed in it and cannot tell you how thankful we all need to be for this community and the ability of all the people in this town to come together and find solutions. And maybe we don't always agree, but we certainly all have the interest of Cordova at heart. And I just can't say how thankful I am for that. I want to thank the volunteers, all the folks that have been working at the airport and the harbor, people who have been making masks, the folks that have volunteered at the IMT. I want to speak to the medical staff who've really stepped up and gone above and beyond to make sure we're all safe. And then certainly to all the city staff who's working their real jobs, making sure the city's running. And on top of that, doing the work that they're doing to make this COVID plan come into play. We've been going pretty hard for a long time. There's been some burnout. I want to put a shout out to Kathy Renfeld, who just left the public information position to pick up her tasks and duties with the Cordova Chamber of Commerce, and want to thank her for that. And just let everyone know that I could not imagine a more hardworking and dedicated team that's making everything work. I know we're not moving as fast as we want to, but you guys need to understand, everyone needs to understand that the playing field changes almost daily. Every morning I wake up and think to myself, what could possibly happen today? Last Friday was Mandate 17, a new rule. So we're in the throes of putting that in place and getting it communicated out. So that's where we're at. I didn't know if someone was talking. So I think everyone needs to know that the city's working on its normal jobs, normal duties. We're working hard on a harbor grant to try to get our harbor improved. And we're working on projects that will be constructed this summer and into the future, and keeping up the day-to-day. And that's all I have to report.
Okay, so council questions. Councilman Sherman.
No questions. Thanks, Helen.
Councilman Schaefer.
No questions, but thanks so much for all your hard work, Ellen.
Councilman Guard.
No questions. Thank you, Helen.
Councilman Meyer.
No questions. Thank you.
Councilman Allison.
No questions. Thank you, Alan.
Councilman Gleason.
I just got one. How fast can you hire the applicants that are applying for the ambassador and janitor jobs? And when you get those, you review them and you can hire them immediately since this is an emergency, or is there some sort of a time frame you have to follow?
No, they can be hired very quickly. We're just trying to assemble the right group of folks. Then there's certainly applicants that maybe aren't able to do some of the functions, and there's a little vetting. We have to interview, we have to go through a process, but it's not weeks, and it certainly is more in the days category. We should have people on the ground by Friday.
Okay, thanks, Helen.
Councilman Baylor.
No comment. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you. City Attorney report.
I think she's just on hold if we need her later, so she probably doesn't have a report. She's not online.
Okay, we don't have the attorney online. She is available if we need her later, though, Council. So we have correspondence to Council, the Incident Management Team medical letter from the 7 doctors, Keep Cordova Safe email from citizens, and email and a letter from April Horton that testified earlier. Is there any Council comments or questions on those? Let's have an open question to Council.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Gleason.
Councilman Gleason.
I would just, I like the doctor's letter. The Keep Cordova Safe letter, we got that last week, also the same letter. And as far as April's letter, not very many people can keep going when they're not working. And I think a lot of Cordovans are watching their bank accounts dwindle right now. And I know for some people, it probably doesn't matter because they're on they're retired and their checks are rolling in, but it really matters to the people that are watching their bank accounts dwindle. And so that is, if it can be done safely, and we can determine that, I'm for looking at getting business owners back up and running as long as it can be done safely. This is going to be around for a long time, and we're probably going to be fighting this for a year at least. And so people are going to have to be able to make money somehow. So that's my comment.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Gleason. Any other comments on correspondence, Council? Okay, hearing none, we have new business, Resolution 04-20-14, a resolution of the Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, ratifying the temporary emergency rules and procedures as revised and enacted by City Manager Helen Howarth in Emergency Order 2020-05, effective April 24th, 2020. So,
So moved.
Yes?
Well, somebody might.
yeah, we need a motion.
Melina just.
I moved.
Okay, sorry, I thought I heard Helen.
I did too, sorry.
So we have a motion, Councilman Schaefer, was that a second?
That was a second.
Okay, motion Meyer and second Schaefer to adopt resolution 04-20-14. Discussion, and I'll go through the list here. Well, I'll start with Councilman Meyer, who made the motion.
I was looking over it, looked good, but it seems like there was a little bit of a change in wording for the mutual aid agreement. So, Helen, I know I've gotten asked this question too. If someone's just working from home and they don't have a physical business location, but they do have a business license because they do a service, but they do it from home, would they need to fill out a mutual aid agreement, or how does that work?
All businesses need to fill out a mutual aid agreement. It basically just says that you will enter into an agreement to follow the COVID rules. And that's just a good practice. And as a business owner, it's not onerous. You just have to fill out the form and send it to us. We did just revise the mutual aid agreement. And just so everyone knows, the new revised, there's one for fishermen and there's one for businesses. And again, it's to simplify and clarify the specific mandates, the mutual aid agreements that need to be in place. Anyone who's signed one in the past, the old version, they still hold. It's basically the same thing, but the new documents are just an easier way of understanding what we're trying to accomplish. So for those who have looked at our website, those documents are available online.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think I heard you speak in favor of the resolution as presented. Okay, thank you. Councilman Schaefer. Second.
Sorry, I was hitting the mute button. Cute out. I am supportive of this as well. I think this is the best resource for Cordova right now.
Okay, thank you. I'll go through the list in order here. Councilman Guard?
Yeah, I'm in favor of the motion. And as long as we don't make it too onerous, I think it's our responsibility to make sure that we can make Cordova as safe as we can.
Okay, Councilman Baylor?
No, I'm not in favor of the motion. I think we can open some of these businesses responsibly, and I think we should be looking at it. And if we, I don't know what better time is now before we get a case. What's the plan long term? Are we going to get a case next week or the week after that, and we're just going to keep these things shut down all year? I mean, you got to have a game plan to end in sight here and operate safely and still operate. Surely we've learned a lot since January of how we can operate safely. So I am not in favor of this at all.
Okay, Councilman Gleason?
Yeah, I'm not in favor of it either. Yeah, I already said previously. So, not in favor.
Okay, Councilman Allison?
Yeah, I'd like to propose an amendment to the Appendix A, Rule 10, change private facilities to read, all private facilities in Cordova are required to comply with State of Alaska public health mandate, period. That'll be the end of Rule 10. I second that.
Okay, we have a proposed amendment in a second. And I'm just catching up with you here.
If I could speak to that amendment when you get a chance.
You betcha. Let me, did you capture that, Susan?
No, but I feel like
Sorry, Councilman Allison, I have the resolution in front of me now. Could you repeat that?
Rule 10, private facilities. All private facilities in Cordova are required to comply with State of Alaska public health mandate. You're getting rid of the continue and adding an S to mandate. And then erasing the rest of that.
Okay, gotcha. So we have a motion and a second, and would you like to speak to your motion, Councilman Allison?
Yes, please. I guess the reason for this is that I struggle with trying to find a business that is not open, or that this keeping the previous mandates in effect, where the risk is any more than what we've already got. I mean, look at the example of the clothing store. What more risk is there to that than there is grocery stores we've already got? The restrictions for your barber shop, they've got their other requirements that they're already, the opening the state, I guess when people say that the state is opening up, the state isn't just opening up everything to go back to business as usual. There are requirements upon requirements upon requirements. Even restaurants can only have 25% capacity right now. That might increase over the next few weeks, but currently it's 25% of their customers. Most probably wouldn't open their inside getting to that kind of a restriction. And then there's other restrictions within it, face masks, distancing, etc. I don't see where the fish store is going to have any more higher risk than your canneries are. And just because you can't control the canneries doesn't mean that you should control everybody else more just because of that. So I just think it's kind of ridiculous to think that we're protecting the town anymore by keeping non-essential businesses from not following the state. My other point with it all is that, you know, the state's already got their experts and they're doing their work and they're helping with all of these user groups and professional organizations, and they're doing all that work, and we're sitting here trying to recreate the rules and recreate the wheel here. Our attorney, I don't know how much we spent on the attorney fighting this crap, but that's what it ends up being. I think we let the state write the rules, let them back up, and then we go from there. So anyway, convince me that the risk is any higher for the businesses that are closed right now than it is for the businesses that we've got open. I haven't been convinced of that yet.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Allison. And Councilman Baylor, second?
Yeah, I guess would echo all what Allison said, but I'd also add, you know, the owners of these businesses, they live amongst us. This isn't some corporate-owned store that they're ordering employees back to work. In the case of April Horton, you know, her operation, and she's going to be taking as much cost and doing things as right as possible for her own business. The same with the rest of the businesses in town. And the other thing is, if, and that's a huge if the issue arose, we're a small enough community, we're nimble enough that if we spot a problem, it can be shut down or anything. And the truth is, these businesses will probably do it before the city will. So I think as long as they have a plan such that they're presented and they can operate safely, then I think we should allow them to operate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go now to Councilman Sherman, who didn't get a chance to speak to the main motion, to speak to this amendment.
So I have been reading all of the state mandates, and they are incredibly stringent. If I was a business owner, I would have serious thoughts about whether or not I could comply with all of them. I was in favor of the original resolution, but I can accept the amendment as well because I feel like we are opening up the largest businesses, our so-called corporations, our canneries, and we are allowing them to open up, and they are following very stringent stipulations as well. And it seems, reading April's plan and the point of some of these other smaller businesses, I mean, our large businesses are now open, and our smaller businesses are suffering, and I agree that we could probably do this in a safe way. I would hope that the incident management team would address this and oversee it carefully, I guess. All I have for you.
Okay, thank you. And Council, I did want to make you aware that your attorney, Holly, is online if you have any questions about process or anything through this deliberation. So I'll go back. I'll just continue. Let's see, where was I? Councilman Meyer, you made the original main motion. I'll start at the top here. Councilman Guard, to the amendment.
Yeah, our first responsibility is the health and well-being in the community. Financial security is part of that health and well-being, as we saw in the aftermath of the Exxon Valdez, and this has probably done much more economic damage than that ever could have. So I am in favor of getting stuff back up and running as fast as we can in a safe manner. I'd like to hear from our medical team and see how they feel about the safeguards that have been put on. We just we open up everything now, and I'm not saying it's not a thing to do, but we'll have everything coming together at once. All the fishermen are coming back, plants are going to open up. You know, we open up all of our businesses. It's, even with restrictions, it's all at once. So we'd just like to hear from our medical team and how they feel about the new state mandate.
Okay, and they kind of,
on this.
you bet, and they kind of,
You understand the finances are part of health and well-being too. Thank you.
okay, thank you. And the medical team reports up through the incident management structure to Helen, so she can speak to your question.
We are actively planning for relaxing rules locally. What would it take? And the medical team is definitely going to be driving that. Our goal is to have a plan in front of you next Wednesday, and it'll talk about the sorts of things that the health professionals want to see in place before they would allow certain things to happen. And that plan will be in place next week. Yeah, I don't think we would have that communication yet, but they are actively looking at that.
Thank you.
And then just for process, and this was kind of my concern from what I heard last week, when council starts amending the rules, you're basically kind of usurping their manager's role there. You can vote down that rule, you can extract that rule like you did last week, and then it would default to the state rule. But once you start amending it, then you're kind of writing your own rules, and that's council kind of getting over onto that tactical side, if that makes sense. So there's a path to do what you want to do, which is default to the state rules. So I just wanted to mention that. So really, the amendment process here, amending a rule in an emergency plan isn't a proper procedure by council.
So he should repeal it if he wants.
So if you want to reconsider the motion to amend the rule to repealing Rule 10, that might be the more appropriate path. Councilman Allison?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I just need to open it up. There haven't been any risk. If there's any more risk in doing that, there is by not. So the risk doesn't change.
Okay.
Whatever you want to do, I don't really care. I don't have a problem with amending the rule. I have no problem doing that or just getting rid of the rule. Whatever you think is best, but either way, I don't want that rule in place.
Okay, yeah. Repealing the rule would take it out of this ordinance, and then it would default. People would still have to comply with the state law, so it gets you to the same place. So Councilman Baylor, you were the second on the amendment. Do you second a repeal of Rule 10?
I do.
Okay, thank you. So that's what's before you, which is to repeal Rule 10 from within this emergency ordinance.
Mr. Mayor?
Or, I'm sorry, resolution. Yes, Councilman Baylor?
So just for clarification, that it would still have to follow the state statute to do the school out. So that part of it doesn't change, correct?
That's correct, because that is state law that's been enacted, and so businesses would still have to comply with state law by default.
Okay, and I think that's the important part, because their doctors and that'll be our also. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'll go back to Councilman Sherman to let you speak to the repeal of that.
I guess I could live with that, but I think really to not be able to wait 1 week to hear from our own medical team, our own local professionals for 7 days, to leave this in place for 7 days. I just, I'd prefer to hear, I know the state has their medical professionals, I'd prefer to hear from ours.
Okay.
So I'm probably not going to vote for repeal this.
Okay, thank you. And then back to Councilman Gard.
Yeah, I am in favor of opening up for all our local businesses just as soon as we can, but again, I'd like say that I'd like to hear from our medical team, make sure this is the right move for Cordova. But we do want to open business up as fast as we can. It's an important part of our health and well-being.
Okay, so I'm hearing no on repeal this. Councilman Schaefer.
Hi, thank you. I am not in support of repealing Rule 10. I also would like to see some of the smaller businesses opening up. I know this summer season is when a lot of these businesses make their money for the year, and I get that the economic stress is stressful during this time, especially if they are able to operate safely as they see it. But I think that Cordova is in a different situation and the rest of the state in terms of our medical infrastructure and in terms of the seasonality of the different people that are arriving soon. So I think that we should continue as we are and hear from our own medical professionals, our own medical professionals and our emergency management team on how they get it set for Cordova to open up. Yeah, waiting 7 more days, I think that's the best way to go about it.
Okay, Councilman Gleason.
Yeah, I'm in favor of getting rid of the number 10. It's already been well said why. Oh, good.
Okay, Councilman Meyer.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of getting rid of Rule 10 at this time. Getting input from our medical professionals and our incident management team would be the best course of action for that. And, you know, when I was reading through this too, the mutual aid agreement looks like they have to be completed within 5 days. I guess maybe of this rule or something, but I would like, if we're opening up non-essential businesses, to have maybe the mutual aid agreement brought into the city and submitted before they open up, as an added precaution for the MI team to be able to really look over their plans for opening. But leave that to the MIT and the medical professionals to decide how to carry that out. But I'm not in favor of getting rid of Rule 10 at this time.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on repealing Rule 10 from Resolution 04-20-14?
Mayor, this is Allison.
Councilman Allison.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it's going to pass, but I still go back to, I haven't heard any of the council members, not one, tell me what the additional risk is. And I don't think that the IMT or the medical team is convinced either that the risk is more by opening up a hair salon or a fish store or a police store than it already is at the grocery stores and canneries. You keep in mind, canneries are going to keep their employees on base for the summer. We're not going to have 500 cannery workers running around town or using the library wireless or any of that stuff this year. They're going to keep them in there. They're going to chain link the whole area down there. They're not going to these 500 people running all over town all the time. The risk just is not there to keep anybody closed more than Dr. Sink and Commissioner Strum and everybody else in the state has already well-defined requirements, and I think that's the way we ought to go. We need to let them make the rules and us implement them and work on training and engaging the people and that kind of thing. So anyway, that's my last deal.
Mr. Mayor, Sherman.
Councilman Sherman.
So, Mr. Allison, I just wanted to comment. now as a part of the IMC team, you know, I'm getting a grasp of everything that's going on, and I do agree that we need to reopen. I'd love to see the library and museum both open, but they can't open because of state mandates. We can, I believe, safely open up small businesses, but I'd like to follow through the process with the IMT, which is what we've been doing in everything with the airport, with the harbor. All those plans are starting to come in place, and things are getting safer by the day. Still seeing people not wearing masks who should be wearing masks, and that's why I want to see this resolution enacted as it stands now, and then I'd like to follow the process and work with the IMT and the medical team to make sure that we can keep our small businesses open. They are going to be depending on our local people this summer to support them. And I can't wait to get back to the Netwalk or the police shop or have my people cut my hair. I don't even want you to see my hair. So I'm in favor of all that. I just think you have a great resolution in front of us that's full of rules that have been put in effect and are showing that we are working together and making smart decisions.
Further discussion, council? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote to repeal item 10 from the resolution.
So on the repeal of Rule 10, Tom Baylor,
Yes.
Kathy Sherman,
No.
Jeff Guard,
No.
Melina Meyer,
No.
Ann Schaefer,
No.
David Allison,
Yes.
David Gleason.
Yes.
Motion fails 3-4.
Okay, so back to the main motion for resolution 04-20-14, a resolution ratifying temporary emergency rules and procedures. I'll go on the main motion. We were down to let's see, Councilman Allison had proposed a amendment.
Well, but they haven't.
Councilman Sherman to the main motion.
I've spoken on that, and I'm in favor of the resolution as it's presented.
Okay, Councilman Meyer.
I'm also in favor of the resolution as written.
Councilman Guard.
I'm in favor of the motion as written.
Councilman Baylor.
I'm not in favor, and my concern and question would be the mayor is just going to come back to us next week, as we've seen before, where sometimes the direction doesn't seem to cross clearly. So, I don't want next week to say, well, the emergency is going to stand. Will this come back to us? Obviously, it's going to pass, but will it come back?
I'm not sure if you're asking a question, Councilman Baylor. Are you asking if council adopts these emergency rules? That means they'll stay in place until Helen revises them. And once she revises them, she would bring them back to you to ratify them.
No, the discussion was that we wanted to hear from, some people wanted to hear from our medical staff, and waiting 7 days is not an issue. My question is, are we going to have this next week with opinions from the medical staff so we can vote this up and down or not? In other words, can we vote next week to open up these businesses?
I think the plan is for, I think I heard Manager Howarth, I'll let her speak to it, to bring a plan to council.
So the plan right at the moment is to, the incident command team is actively looking at what would it take for us as a community to feel comfortable opening up, loosening the restrictions that we have in place. And the medical team and incident command will be working on a plan to bring forward to you next week on your Wednesday meeting. And I just want to share something that Holly said. She goes, we can be more restrictive. So as long as we can identify to the state why we are going above and beyond their state mandates. And if you need any guidance on that, we can certainly ask Holly. She's online, but at this moment in time, these rules are temporary rules and can be revoked by council at any point in time. And I just want to bring up that one of the things that was an issue last week was the facial coverings rule. And I just want to make sure that we are clear that that rule is embedded in this document that you're voting on right now. And if there are any ideas that you want to make changes, this is when you would do it.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Baylor.
Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, I might want to weigh in on that. I didn't realize that. I do have a question to the attorney. Can we, city of Cordova, legally put in a mandate that requires people to wear masks in the harbor? Can we do that? Because right now, you can, if you've got that, you're 6 feet away from somebody, you don't have to wear a mask or take law. So can we legally make a rule that you have to wear a mask in the harbor regardless from anybody?
Okay, Holly, are you online?
Yes. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes. Did you hear the question?
Yes, I did. Yes,
Okay.
you may. At this stage, yes, you may.
Okay, with that said, the mandate that was proposed to us last week was, in my opinion, very confusing. The last statement stating that if nobody was in your area, you would not be required to wear the mask. I think that needs to be visited and taken out, and it say you have to wear a mask in the harbor. And then everywhere else, you have to have social distancing. And I would also recommend that for the uptown area, just concur with or visit with all the businesses and have them voluntary basis require face masks to come into their stores. That way, the whole downtown business area and all these other businesses would be locked up. We would have to wear masks. We wouldn't have to worry about having people police the area from now until, who knows, November, December. But to me, that would be a better way of approaching it. It's volunteer to close all stores down if you don't have a mask on, and then just plain and simple, you have to wear a mask in the harbor clearly. Thank you.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, Councilman Baylor, but again, procedurally, it's before council to either repeal the mask portion of the resolution or not. So I'm not sure.
If you don't understand the mask portion, then you don't know how to vote on it. I'm trying to get this cleared up for all of it. Because right now, I can tell you, I've been down the harbor. People aren't wearing the mask because all I can keep it 6 foot away. It's very unclear of what our direction is. And as far as I'm concerned, myself, it's unclear. So that's why I'm bringing it up. I don't think it's clear to everybody.
Helen?
Just to be clear, so the rule at this moment in time does not require you to wear a mask in the harbor, in every space in the harbor, just on the docks and the ramps and where you can't keep 6 feet of social distance. So if you're, for instance, repairing a net and it's 11 o'clock at night and there's no one around you, you could, if you're on the dock, take your mask off and work on your net. The minute someone enters the dock area or is within 6 feet of you, you would have to put the mask back on. And that's true with any section of this rule. If you're walking down the street on Main Street and you don't see anyone around, you don't have to have a mask on. But the minute someone is going to approach you and you know you can't keep 6 feet social distance, you have to put it on. And Holly, I don't know if you want to speak to why these mask rules, these facial covering rules are so restrictive, and it has to do with we're going above and beyond what is constitutionally allowed, I guess. Maybe not, that's not the right word. Holly, you can speak to it.
Right. Well, no, that is it. And essentially, whenever we adopt mandates, we are infringing, whether we're doing it lawfully or unlawfully, and we do it lawfully, on somebody's personal liberty. Telling someone what to wear and how to wear it is personal liberty, right? And we have a right to privacy in Alaska. We have a heightened right. So what that means is everything we do has to be tied to the risk of an outbreak of COVID. So if we're telling people, you must wear a mask at all times, that is not necessarily narrowly tailored to preventing the outbreak of COVID-19 if the person is not around any other human being, or they're only with, say, individuals in their household where they are with it. We already have rules that allow them to be around and socialize with and close to their household. The sentence that people are struggling with is all individuals alone in a space requiring facial coverings under the rule are not required to wear a covering unless and until another person outside that person's household arrives at their location. And the purpose of this is to say, if you're alone, if you're just with your household, you don't have to wear a mask. Because if we require them to wear a mask in that setting, our whole would be vulnerable. Because the risk of spread is not safe. If it's vulnerable, then it's not narrowly tailored. So it's vulnerable to constitutional challenge.
Well, this is Baylor again. Well, thank you. That clears up. Basically, we're going by the state mandate that requires social distancing. That's the end result of all this.
Okay. So, Councilman Baylor, I heard an objection to the overall resolution. It might be helpful for the other council or do you still have an objection, I guess, to the overall resolution?
Nope, I'm done. Thank you. That cleared it up.
Okay, thank you.
Going by the state mandate.
Okay. I just was going to share if a councilman does object overall in your specific, even if you don't want to repose or repeal, other councilmen may agree with you and want to repeal it so that you can adopt it. Councilman Schaefer. Main resolution as submitted.
I am in support of the resolution as submitted, and I don't have any more comments.
Okay, Councilman Gleason.
I'm not in support, and I hope we do see this next Wednesday. So I didn't quite hear Helen say that it's guaranteed to be on there, so is that actually the case?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding that this would come back to you next week?
Yeah.
No.
I didn't quite hear if you said definitively that this was going to be on an agenda item next Wednesday.
No, this is, you asked for it to be revisited this Wednesday as council, and so it's here for your approval today, and it will not be on a future agenda unless you want more discussion.
So,
okay. Well, just I would like more discussion next Wednesday.
Mr. Mayor, I think I have a point of clarification.
okay, can we wait? Could we take one councilman at a time here, please? We're still on Councilman Gleason. So, Councilman Gleason, it's when council adopts something, you don't just put it on the next agenda so you can, you have to reconsider it or something. Otherwise, you wouldn't enact things, I think. Straighten me out if I'm wrong on that, Holly. I do want to make a clarification, though, because I think I heard you ask something, and I'm not sure if you got your answer. And I guess I want to clarify it for myself as the chair as well. Helen indicated that she's going to bring she may have completed in time a reopening plan for Cordova businesses. but that does not imply that she is going to change any rules between now and Wednesday or propose changes to any of her rules. She's just going to bring, if it's completed in time, a plan for reopening, and that may have time frames that are weeks or months or whatever. So I just wanted to, is that, did I hear that right, Helen? Okay, I'm seeing a nod. So does that help, Councilman Gleason?
Well, it does, but so you're saying we would be able to open business with them just having to follow all the state's mandates, which is what we were trying to do with number 10. That's what we were trying to do with number 10, which I think everybody at first was in favor of it, but now they aren't in favor of repealing it. But it would fall back to the exact same thing that Councilman Allison said, which is must follow all state mandates. I'm confused on that. I feel like we would have to see this again because Helen would have to modify her rule to say that.
Okay.
Am I wrong?
I think I can help with where we're at on the item in front of you. So you voted to repeal item 10, and that vote failed. So the small business piece is behind you. The rules that Cordova has in place will continue in place unless there's further modifications. I mean, on that item 10, you've already voted. Councilman Baylor was speaking to item 6, the facial coverings, and I believe that was the one that he was speaking to that aligned with the state's requirements, or the general alignment with state requirements of your ordinances that the attorney was speaking to. And I hope I haven't confused you further.
Not really. Doing this over the phone is really hard, and so I just don't want to waste. We meet once a week, and things are happening so fast. People are struggling right now. I don't want to keep, it's next week, and then we can't move forward. So I just want to have the capability of moving forward with following what the state's doing, if it can be done safely. So that's kind of the assurance I'm hoping for.
Well,
that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's important. Okay, was that Councilman Allison?
Sherman.
Councilman Sherman. I think I heard Councilman Schaefer before you.
I'll yield.
First, Holly, can you repeat what you said about aligning with the state mandates? I think it's important for Councilman Gleason to understand and for council to understand what this resolution does.
Sure. I would think of it this way. The state are law, and every business owner and individual will need to follow those laws. Whether or not we enact a rule on a local level, making that, restating that law or not, doesn't matter. They will still be required to do what they need to do under state law. So whatever the requirements are for their businesses and their individual social distancing, that stands. And when we're thinking about repealing Rule 10, by repealing Rule 10, all we do is ensure that those businesses are just simply doing what they have to for the state. But it doesn't take away their need to do that. They still comply with state law, and we still have some enforcement capabilities because of our police powers regarding state law. Still are police officers in Cordova that would enforce those mandates to a certain extent. And so that is an important existing mandate regardless of what we do. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I understood all that. I just don't want to make it harder than we have to, is I guess what I'm saying. And I also want to make sure that we have the opportunity to talk about this next week about opening the same way that the state is doing. I would like to at least have people be able to submit their plans like April did so that we can do that. I think she did an excellent job. And I think the point was pretty well made that there's no danger we have people going in and out of the grocery stores, in and out of the post office. You know, they're walking around down at the harbor. Having one individual sitting in her chair at a time with nobody ever, you know, I mean, I don't see any danger in that. And so I just want to make sure we're not wasting, I don't want to get to next Wednesday and not be able to move on this if council's in favor of moving forward with opening some non-essential businesses.
Okay, Councilman Gleason, we can put reopening Cordova business on next agenda item. I think that's absolutely a policy discussion, but I don't know that council is going to be able to enact something right there. You can certainly provide guidance to the manager to put a rule in place. Does that work?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Apologize. It took me a little bit to understand what you were getting at, but no, absolutely. So Councilman Schaefer.
This is Councilman Schaefer. I was just going to clarify that what you had clarified about the city manager bringing to us the reopening of Cordova, like phase plan next week. So nothing more to add.
Thank you, Councilman Sherman.
That's exactly what I was going to do. I expected from the manager a report from the medical team, a report from IMT, proposed policy to open business in the community at the next meeting. And then if we approve that, she can go ahead and make her rule and off we go.
Okay, thank you. And then Councilman Gleason, I'm sorry I didn't clarify. You were opposed or in favor of the main motion to ratify these rules?
Yeah, I'm opposed.
Okay. Councilman Allison.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Same story. I'm against the resolution simply because I don't believe that the city should be trying to rewrite the whole story. Just because we can doesn't mean that we should. And you know, it's one of those things that we're allowed to, and unless somebody decides to sue us, then we're not legally allowed to anymore. I mean, the risk is just not there. I think we're wasting our resources trying to write rules. You know, resources not only in time and money, attorney's time, and all of this is already taken care of. And we just need to look at numbers, real numbers, not anticipated numbers or potential numbers, but look at what's really going on and where our risks, truly identify our risks and what the risk change is by doing something different. So I think we ought to follow the state policies, and I do not support the resolution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Allison. For your attorney, Holly, just a clarification, if council does not ratify these rules, it really doesn't matter. They will still stand in effect because the managers put them in place. Really, the ratification is the opportunity for council to repeal some or all of it. Is that correct?
Well, the way that we set it up, if council doesn't ratify the rules, those changes will go away. So council can vote something up or down. The ability of the city manager to move very quickly and get rules in place and make them effective very quickly is why we protect that incident command relationship and the adoption of the rules. But at the same time, we have made council, I would call it almost veto power. We have given that authority. So no, if this is not ratified, and these rules, the rules will be default to rules as they were in place at the last ratification.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Yeah, so and if they were, the last iteration was in conflict with the current state laws, that's a whole nother problem.
Exactly. It does create a problem, which is why I think the method you've been using, which is looking at the rules individually when there's a problem, and addressing those amendments, that is a good method to protect the police.
Okay. Councilman, I think I've been through the entire list here on the main motion, main resolution. Is there any further discussion, council?
Yeah, this is Selena.
Councilman Meyer.
Yeah, I think maybe one of the confusions for about this is these emergency operations rules have been in front of council, different rules, bunch of times. So this exact one might not be in front of us again next Wednesday, but if the manager changed them, then it would be in front of us again. I think the confusion kind of happens because it's been changed a bunch. So correct me if I'm wrong, but this exact one this past today won't be in front of us, but a new one might be. And it's the same emergency operations rules, but a different version of it. Is that kind of
Yes.
Correct? That's correct. This is Holly. That's correct.
Okay, so next Wednesday we could get a new one. If the manager put a different ruling in there, say opening up different businesses, or that might be an agenda item all on its own, talk about, get feedback from.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, Councilman Baylor.
Councilman Baylor.
See, I could just keep going around in circle here. So let me just say what I understood. I understood that we had enough votes in favor of opening businesses, but a couple of the council people said instead of doing it now, we wanted to wait 7 days so they could get input from the medical community. Now that's what we stated. So my assumption would be that next week this will come before us. We'll get the opinion from the medical community, and at that time, we can decide to override this and go with the state guidance and start opening businesses. Now that's kind of where the discussion was. People want to hear from our local. So those that were asked for that, I hope that's what you meant. Thank you.
Okay, Helen?
So to answer your question, I think what we could do, again, we'll get the feedback from the medical professionals, and if they're suggesting that an immediate opening of those non-essential businesses as outlined in the Health Mandate 16 is possible, I can make sure that we have a rule in place that allows for that, so that simultaneous with the discussion, you could approve or disapprove of the new rule. Does that work?
Well, I don't want to speak for all the councils, but I think that's what I would put. I would like to see their opinion. I really don't want somebody to interpret their opinion. I would like to see in writing what their thoughts were, and I think that would help make a part decision. Thank you.
Okay, so what I can do, and this will help with this time crunch, so we don't have to wait then a full another week, is we could put a rule in place, as is my prerogative as city manager working with the incident command team. If they feel like the direction of the medical staff is to allow that loosening of rules, we can put a rule in front of you next week for discussion of the loosening, and then if you guys want to head in that direction, there will be a rule that you could bring up and agree to. Or it just reverts back to what you have in front of you now, if there's nothing to discuss.
And this is Holly, just to dovetail on that. I think a really good way to do that is if the emergency order is prepared that has that has just Rule 10 in it, right? That's the one that is most problematic. And then council can vote to ratify, to end the state after your council meeting. So council can then vote to ratify it or not, or, you know, or repeal it. And then that way it's triggered. You have to take action on that rule. But we'll limit that emergency order to just that rule, so it doesn't have an implication for any of the other rules then put into place to ensure and safe law.
Okay. So, further discussion on the resolution. Okay, roll call vote, please.
So on Resolution 4, 2014, Ann Schaefer? Ann Schaefer?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
Okay, yes.
Kathy Sherman?
Yes.
Tom Baylor?
No.
Melina Meyer?
Yes.
David Allison?
No.
Jeff Guard?
Yes.
David Gleason?
No.
Motion carries 4-3.
Okay, next item is approval of Cordova School District plans for 2020 Cordova High School graduation. Entertain a motion.
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
Have a motion, Baylor, and was that Meyer second?
I think it was Allison, but, yeah, Meyer.
Okay. Councilman Baylor, would you like to speak to the motion?
Councilman Allison made the motion.
Oh, okay. Councilman Allison, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, we've got a good plan, and there's not enough protecting everybody, and I think the state can do it just fine, so let them do it.
Okay, Councilman Meyer.
Yeah, I think they have a good plan of doing that, and if they feel safe and the families and graduates feel safe doing it, then I'm not going to stand in their way of the plans they made.
Okay, Councilman Sherman, discussion?
No, I'm in favor of approving.
Thank you. Councilman Baylor?
Looks good to me.
Thank you. Councilman Guard?
Yeah, fine to me too. I'm in favor.
Councilman Schaefer?
I'm also in favor. I think it's really creative.
Councilman Gleason?
I'm in favor.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this is Allison.
Councilman Allison?
Yeah, I just wanted to express appreciation to the school district for doing something for our seniors. They got their senior year ripped out from underneath them, and appreciate that making an effort to at least have as good of a graduation as we can. I know it's a difficult situation, but I think they're doing everything they can to make it work for them. So, thank you.
Further discussion, council? Sorry, Councilman Baylor?
Nothing here.
Okay, I thought I heard a council comment. Roll call vote, please.
Melina Meyer?
Yes.
David Allison?
Yes.
Tom Baylor?
Yes.
Kathy Sherman?
Yes.
David Gleason?
Yes.
Jeff Guard?
Yes.
Ann Schaefer?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Okay, so next item is discussion of COVID-19 emergency response. And I think the idea behind this was to provide policy guidance to the city manager, incident management team from council.
Mayor Cook, Mr. Sherman.
Councilman Sherman.
I think we hashed out a lot of what we want to see next week, and I think it'll be a better process from what we're all learning, and I would hope that the manager will get us, show us in the packet the medical response team comments, recommendations from the IMT, and a proposed policy that can turn into a rule of open business in the community. I think that is our next step, and I certainly want to see it happen too, but I want to follow this process. I think it's helping all of us do things the right way.
Thank you, Councilman Sherman. And pending agenda might be a time to consider whether or not to allow a little flexibility if the information comes in a little late or something, to schedule the meeting time around the information rather than try to horn the information into a meeting schedule. Councilman Allison.
Yeah, no, nothing further. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Councilman Meyer.
I don't have anything right now.
Councilman Schaefer.
No, I don't think I have anything more to add right now.
Councilman Gleason.
Yeah, I would just say if IMT, they need other assets that we're not providing them, like Helen's already got employment things listed and we're getting applicants, but if there's anything else that we're not doing, for them to bring that to Helen's attention to ask us, so that we're not, so nobody's waiting on each other, I guess. So.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to go back to the math, because that's probably the biggest thing that I get called on, people talking, asking, and I want to be the one to explain to people. I always kind of direct them to the city, but I want to be sure I totally understand this, and I think I do, but first occasion. So basically the state mandate that we got to have social distancing. So if you're within 6 foot of somebody, you must wear a mask. I think that's the tone of it, and it's really a smart thing to do. So basically, that's what we're requiring in the harbor and uptown. And I guess there's added wording there that you have to wear a mask in the harbor, or we want you to wear a mask. I'm not sure, but basically, correct me if I'm wrong, that's the rule we're living by. If you're down there, and if you're within 6 foot of somebody outside of your own family, you have to wear a mask. And I'm not sure how forceful that would be, but and again, I think for the public, we really need to be clear on this, because I know we're going to be putting signs up that says mask required. So am I stating that correctly, or is there somehow more meat or more enforcement to do when we have a sign up there, mask required?
We'll be clearer on what that means now that we have guidance and ratification of this rule. We can articulate it better. And again, we'll have the ambassadors that will help with that, because there is confusion. It's like, if I'm walking down the street, should I have a mask on or not? And it depends on who is around you. And the same is going to be true in the harbor. If you're on your boat, you're essentially socially distanced from anybody else that might be in the harbor. You don't need to wear a mask. But if you're on the docks or the ramps, the assumption is that you will come in contact with people. Even if you're walking by each other, you cannot maintain 6 feet of social distance. So you must wear a mask unless there's nobody else around.
Okay, thank you. And I think it's worth repeating in our health staff or committee. Everybody said it, but I think it's worth repeating again. Is the object of wearing a mask isn't so much for your own protection, but it's protecting others. It's protecting your neighbors. It's protecting those that are perhaps more vulnerable. So really a consideration of your friend and neighbor to wear these masks. I don't think it's asking too much of anybody as they go down Harbor or different places. So I guess I would just put that out there for people, just respect other people, and it's not that big a deal to do, and I think we'll get more clear direction as far as, enforceable. I know a gentleman stopped me yesterday and said, well, that guy should get a $500 fine, and I'm like, well, thinking to myself, well, there's nobody within 20 feet of him, so he really isn't breaking the law. That's why I'm trying to say this. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Baylor. Councilman Gard.
Yeah, I think the concerns of everybody on the council about wanting to get other businesses open as rapidly as we can was pretty apparent today. There may be some disagreement on how rapid is, but we want to see it happen just as fast as it can in a safe manner. I hope that maybe there is some mechanism we can use for maybe the Chamber of Commerce interactions or some way get the affected small businesses involved in the conversation of reopening on the emergency management team, conversations with that, so it doesn't seem as edictish as some of the things in the past to where there wasn't input or conversation beforehand. So anyway, that's all I got to say.
Okay, any further discussion on COVID-19 emergency response?
Yeah, this is Melina.
Councilman Meyer.
I don't know if this is more appropriate to do during pending agenda, but kind of just about the discussion that happened today about reopening businesses and the emergency operation kind of rules, and that the ambassador does have more authority to change the rules, and then it comes to us to change them if need be. As far as opening the businesses, I would like it to come to council as a discussion that we've kind of talked about with the information at hand, rather than it be an emergency order that just gets put into place without a meeting. I think that this is something that is going to get a lot of feedback on. I think there are a lot of rules in place of how to make that happen. But I would like to see that as a council item, because my personal thoughts on that matter.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Meyer. Helen.
I was just going to say, I think that was certainly the intention, because I understand the sensitivities of some of these rules. And as I mentioned, when the incident command team with their medical director comes up with a plan on how to reopen Cordova safely, I will bring that plan to council, and with it, we can bring, as Holly mentioned, a single rule that could potentially accomplish what the plan is indicating can happen, and that will be up to you to ratify. I mean, technically, yes, I can make the rule. I will make the rule, but I would want your approval before doing that.
Okay, so any other discussion on the COVID-19 emergency response? Susan.
You can just have a rule prepared with like an effective date of the next day.
Yeah.
And then council could ratify for it to go into effect the next day.
Yeah, it wouldn't go into effect until you all had approved it.
Okay. Hearing no further council discussion, Councilman Meyer, that was a good segue into pending agenda. So per Councilman Glasson's request, I had on pending agenda for the next special council meeting, reopening Cordova businesses. And I guess I'd ask council if, and there's different information that needs to come to bear, and the incident management team has this as one of their several tasks. If that timing works out to be Wednesday at noon, maybe it is, but I guess the question is, for scheduling purposes, what's council's will? Would you rather wait until try to have the special meeting on Wednesday with that information, but if that information doesn't come together, maybe move the meeting time?
We're supposed to have a regular meeting next week.
That's right.
At 7 p.m.
That's right. We have the regular city council meeting. So I guess the follow-up question would be, do we need a special meeting in addition?
I mean, it's doubtful that Helen and the team and the med team and everybody will have everything ready for a regular meeting packet. So I'd say we should probably plan on a special next week.
Like Friday? Like a Friday special meeting?
It's up to you guys.
Because the regular meeting needs, the packets go out, would be this Friday.
Week on Friday, yeah.
And yeah, I wouldn't have all the information by Friday. The special meeting packets can go out on Tuesday, 24 hours in advance.
So we could do like a 6 p.m. special just before the regular, or we could do it on a different day at noon next week.
Okay. How do you feel about having that information ready by next Tuesday?
We will just do it, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Does that sound okay, council? Special meeting at 6 p.m., regular meeting at 7 p.m. Regular council packet would go out this Friday. The special meeting packet would go out Tuesday by 6 p.m.
Sounds good to me. Councilman Schaefer.
Baylor, like,
Okay. Any objection? Okay.
I'm here.
Okay, great. Is there other pending agenda items? Our calendar. So maybe we should look ahead a little bit. We've got a May 6th regular council meeting scheduled. What about the third week? Do we want a regular council meeting then? We've kind of talked about having one a month. Any thoughts, Helen?
Yeah, I think we're finally getting on step with this whole COVID response, and hopefully there won't be a lot of changes on the state. I mean, there's going to be continued changes on the state level, and we'll want to discuss them, but I'm not sure if we have to. I think we can start focusing more on city business.
So you think just tentatively plan to have a meeting on third week of May of May as well. And then if something changes, and special meetings on Wednesday at noon in between. Sound okay, council?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not hearing objections, so I should go that path. Hey, anything else for pending agenda? Okay, do we have any audience participation that's called in? Okay. Do we know if that line is still open?
2.5 hours, we've lost them.
Yeah, it's been 2.5 hours.
Maybe not.
Okay, we'll go to.
Yeah, I'm here. Play.
Oh, April, okay. Would you like to make audience participation comments?
I would. I've been listening to the whole meeting and that. You know, I'm not asking to be opened up like tomorrow. I have put my plan in play. I just am merely reaching out and saying that I am just a one-on-one salon. You've seen my plan on how I can run effectively and efficiently, on not affecting me and not affecting my clients. I certainly don't want that to happen. I know they don't want that to happen. I don't see where a medical board can dictate any more than what the state has for me to reopen. I'm just asking, can small businesses that are one-on-one, that can control the situation in a very effective manner, please open? Can you please consider this? That's all I'm asking. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there other audience participation? Okay, I wasn't sure if we had lost any of the other callers. Council comments, and I'll go in order here. Councilman Schaefer.
No, I just want to say thank you to all the other members of council and also city staff and IMP and everyone in the community. who's volunteering and stepping up and helping keep everyone in Cordova safe and healthy. We want to get the city opened up as soon as possible, but we also need to make sure that we're doing it in a safe way and taking care of our neighbors. So, thanks so much.
Thank you. Councilman Sherman.
No comment.
Councilman Gleason.
I just thank Helen, Clay, Susan, and anybody else down there keeping the meeting going. These are very difficult. So that's all I got.
Councilman Meyer.
No comments.
Councilman Ellison.
Yeah, just like to go back one more time to the reason we have rules is to mitigate risk. And when the state allows essential services to be open, that pretty much sold our risk. We don't have any higher risk in any of our businesses in town than we've got at the processors and the grocery stores and the post office. So keep that in mind when we're making these rules, that they're to mitigate the risk. And economies or not, we need to focus on what it takes to mitigate the risks that are involved. Appreciate everybody's efforts on the management team and all our employees and council too. Thanks for all the time everybody's putting into this. Thank you.
Councilman Baylor.
No comment.
Councilman Guard.
No comment. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, we don't have any executive session items identified. Is there any objection to adjourning? Hearing none, we're adjourned. Thank you, council.
Thank you.